And we are live. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Global Citizens. My name is Kelvin. I'm the show's creator, and I'm also the host. My guest for today is Michelle Virata, or as she preferred to be called, Mish Virata. She is actually a second generation American. She is of Filipino descent, and she is an international movement coach that specializes in partner acrobatics and acro yoga. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
without further ado, let me welcome Mish to the show. Hi, Mish. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks for having me today.
You're most welcome. All right. Okay, so my first question I actually want to focus immediately on your area of expertise first. Yeah. So you are a partner acrobatics and acro yoga coach, and I believe you're also a pediatric speech language. Yeah. And I believe this is something that you mentioned in your social media. You have been living a nomadic life whereby you are traveling in multiple parts of the world, and now you're currently settling in Bali. So this one is I must ask is because typically if I heard the word yoga, people will just assume it's something like learning how to stretch and all that, which I don't think it's true because I've tried it before. It's really exhausting. So maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on that if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah. I started off teaching yoga as most people know yoga to be. I still teach that right now, yoga classes here in Bali. That's primarily what I have been working as because people are more familiar with it.
Yeah.
Um, what I specialize in and what my passion is acro yoga, which led me to partner acrobatics. Acro yoga is a yoga practice that involves two people at
Mm-hmm.
least. So you need a partner in order to do it. Usually the person is on the floor, the base, laying down with their arms and legs up, and then the second person, the flyer, is on top. That's who what I usually do. And that person spins around on the feet and the hands of the person on the bottom. And then that went beyond into partner acrobatics, which is the person is standing on the floor and they're lifting the flyer in the air with their arms and legs. So it's kind of like what you see in circus, a
Oh,
little like cheerleading.
Cirque du
Um,
Soleil, something along the line.
sorry.
Cirque du Soleil. It's an acrobatic based show that's quite popular when I
Yeah,
was in Singapore.
not quite exactly Cirque du Soleil. That's a very high level of it, but something like that.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. All right, all
Yeah,
right.
it's really nice because the yoga part comes into play in that when you do your own yoga movement practice yourself, your intention all goes within yourself and you become more mindful of how you're moving and where your mind goes, um, like what your thoughts are. You challenge yourself, right?
Yeah.
Like running or CrossFit. But when it comes to acro yoga or partner acrobatics, you then have to move with another person. So you have two people with very different movements, different sizes, different thoughts, and then it forces you to communicate what you need from that person, um, and hold that space for them, while you explore together. It
All right.
also requires a lot of trust, because when you're being tossed in the air, you're trusting that the person's going to catch you.
Hmm. I'm imagining if somebody who is like an incredibly thin person trying to catch me now, and yeah, I'm 5'8" and I weigh around. I definitely am not a tiny guy, so I'm thinking how he or she might catch me. But okay, let's not think of that. Let's not think of the worst here.
Well,
Okay,
you
so
probably wouldn't want me to catch you, but I know some people that would.
good enough. Okay, so I actually read a little bit of it of what you're doing actually. So one of the key aspect of it is to allow the partners to actually bond in a much more spiritual aspect of it. Yeah,
Mm.
I believe this philosophy was taught in India, and I recall you told me that you spent some time in it. So how does this work actually? Because I know if it like a team sports, let's say is like they teach you that the principles that you use to run a team is how you manage an organization or how you, or I used to be in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so it's like how I approach a certain mindset or training is how I approach some things in life. So how does acro yoga actually assist in that sense?
Um, I think it depends on the purpose behind why you're doing the acro yoga practice.
Okay.
It's a relatively new concept in the fitness world. It only really started appearing maybe 20 years ago. It started getting more popular around the world in the last 5 years, I would say, in the last couple of years.
20 years ago.
Um,
Okay, I was seven. I was seven.
like the very, very beginnings. But even still, like when I first started this practice in 2015, I didn't really know much about it. And in the States where I'm from, it was pretty big, which is how I found it. But then when I started traveling, I wasn't really able to practice it because not a lot of people knew what it was. Now there's a lot more people teaching, the interest is growing. Instagram helps a lot because that's usually where you see all these photos, so people are more aware. I would say, like, for me personally, where I'm at with the practice, it's like any kind of movement, right? You start somewhere and then the journey takes you to different places. So originally it was more about fun and connection and learning how to kind of be silly and tap back into your inner child and play with other adults. So
Okay.
that's what got me into this practice from yoga, where I was doing it on my own. And now I'm kind of having to interact and talk with other people and trust them and have them like touch platonically parts of my body to keep me safe. That can be quite challenging for a lot of people, but I would say that's what brings people into the practice is that it's just so much fun and you make friends very easily because everyone is kind of here to share and connect with each other and play.
All right.
Um, go into higher level tricks that looks a little bit more like circus. I'm more serious with it. Like if we're not making something happen because we're still learning, then the partner and I need to take a step back and kind of like you're approaching any teamwork kind of situation where you're like, okay, we're supporting each other. Let's figure out what's going wrong. Um, but it's definitely more of like a training at that point where you're a little bit focused on doing the trick together, and it still is fun, but it's like fun because you're working together towards it.
All right. Okay, so for those of you who just tuned into the show for the very first time, yeah, Global Citizens is a show whereby I invite third culture kids, expatriates, some well, occasionally international speakers, and even nomads, or basically those individuals who have experienced multicultural lifestyle because they have either lived in different parts of the world or they have worked in the different parts of the world. The reason being is that when you are visiting a country on a holiday, you do see some cultural issues here and there. But the thing is that that is something that you see and you may experience it. But all these individuals that I mentioned actually live and then they actually experience all this and it shapes who they are. Michelle, while actually is an expat in a sense, she is actually, as I mentioned, she has a very unique case because she is a second generation American. She's from Philippines. Oh, sorry, her parents are from Philippines. Yeah, am I to be more accurate? And she do actually, while she accepts herself as a citizen of America, she do feel some identity issue at times because, for one thing, is that unless maybe you're living in some West Coast area like San Francisco or Los Angeles or something, you definitely do not see those who are of the same ethnicity as yours, or it's a rare occasion. So, Mish, my next question is this: what is one word would you use to describe your cultural identity and why?
One word to describe my cultural identity.
Yeah,
Oh, um,
I can give you. You can say more if you want to, but I don't think. I think it'll be really, really confusing.
um, it's I don't know of a word. I'd say maybe confusing then.
All right, fair
um,
enough.
Yeah, it's been quite confusing. Because I remember growing up in the States. I lived in a place where it was predominantly white,
Okay.
but in the 90s, right? So it was kind of idealized to be a white person, but I never really saw myself as quite different. If I looked at color, right, I
Yeah.
thought that okay, white people have lighter skin or white skin, and then there's black people, which there were some black people where I grew up that I went to school with. Not many, but their skin was more like black, you know. So I kind of thought, well, if I pick one, I'm kind of white, right? I'm not black. um,
I don't judge on
and
that. I don't judge.
and then you know everyone in the states they kind of if they're white they have ethnic background from like Europe and other places. So I was like, yeah, my family's from the Philippines. Like that's where they're from. It wasn't until a little bit later. I remember this very specifically. We had multicultural night at our school. It was like a yearly event where we would kind of honor where our ancestors came from or ethnicity came from, and there was like 4 or 5 of us that had parents from Asia. And it wasn't just we were Asian descent, it was our parents literally came from Asia and we were the first ones born in the United States. And everyone else, you know, even the African Americans, like their families immigrated long, long time ago. So they separated us by continent in a room. So there was one room was all the European descent kids, and then one room was like African descent kids, and then one room was Asian descent. And it just felt very isolating because everyone was hanging out in the other 2 rooms, predominantly European descent room, and like all of us were looking at each other like, wow, this is kind of interesting that we're grouped together, you know? And so for the first time, I realized that there was this disparity in like racial representation in the school I was going to. And growing up, I just found that, yeah, that race just kind of played this big role in that, you know, I would have my white friends come home and they would have to take their shoes off to visit my home and they didn't get that.
Yeah.
And I had to say just the rule,
Yeah.
you know, my Asian friends, they understood, they would automatically take their shoes off. So those small things that you don't realize as a child make you very different from your home life, the culture there, and then the culture outside of that, which is usually school and what you see on TV and what you see in the movies and hear on the radio, you know, all the media and everything. So I kind of denied a huge part of of myself. I got embarrassed because my parents clearly, like, their English is very good. They've been speaking English longer than I have been. But yeah, I could just see the difference. And I would always compare to like television shows and other friends, family life, and myself. And so I felt more comfortable being friends with other Asian Americans, um, and identified as an Asian American. But at some point, I realized that also by isolating myself with other people who felt like I did, I wasn't really able to grow beyond what is it like being an Asian American, you know, like how are other people in the country that I'm born and raised and live in, my home country, how do other people also live? And how is their culture shaped them? And what is American culture, right? And then leaving my home country and traveling was a whole nother kind of like, oh, okay, so this is what American culture is like. That's
All
what
right.
I really identify with. And now this is whatever the culture of the country I'm in, you
All
know?
right. Yeah, I can relate to all that. I remember when I was younger, there used to be a show in Nickelodeon called The Brothers Garcia, and I always see them wearing a shoe around the house. So I was wondering, okay, why do they wear the shoe on the inside? Because for us Asians, we either wear slippers. I think this is a common trait for Japanese, or typically we don't wear the shoe. We don't need to wear a slipper inside the house. So it depends on how it is. But the thing is, yeah, I can relate to that. And Okay, regarding what you mentioned, especially in media, yeah, I think in next year there will the Marvel will release their first ever Asian led superhero solo. It's called Shang-Chi, which means Rising Spirit. It's gonna be Star Simu Liu, who is actually a Taiwanese American. Oh, sorry, Taiwanese Canadian, and Tony Leung, who is actually a legend in the Hong Kong drama, is actually going to play as one of the central antagonists, the Mandarin. So my question to you for this one is this: with regards to the lack of representation of people of color in the media, yeah, if you could create a fictional character, what would the character be like?
um, I really like this has been something that I've always felt really passionate about. Because at one point I was like, I want to be an actress in Hollywood. And when I really kind of
Fina
learned,
recently won a Golden Globe, so congratulations
yeah.
to her.
When I looked at it at the time, I was like, well, to be very realistic, and I was always idealistic with things, like no, we're all equal, everyone's the same, but the industry, like there just are less jobs for Asian Americans. Maybe not so much now. I mean, I know it's still true because my sister-in-law actually is an actress, and she does a lot of like independent films and kind of gets typecasted based on her race because she's also Filipino American. But yeah, I was like, okay, that might just be too challenging. I think that what was that movie, Crazy Rich Asians? I was
Yeah,
so excited when
that
I
was
heard.
not accurate. That was not
No, I
accurate.
know, I know,
Hell
I know
no.
that it's very much one very probably small part of Singapore. I've been to Singapore before, um, but I really liked that it was the first Hollywood film that had an all Asian cast, and it wasn't there's definitely like the Singaporean side. Like it's definitely like trying to show what life is like there, right? But I think that as far as the main character, the Asian American, like she wasn't anything particularly stereotypical. She was just a person living in New York who just happened to be of Asian descent. So nothing about her mannerisms were particularly stereotyped either. So I think that yeah, if I were to create a character, like an Asian American character or whatever, they would just be a regular person. Like, like imagine a role that like Brad Pitt does, and I mean it's also a movie, right? So it'd be kind of interesting, but like just replace Brad Pitt with an Asian person, or Angelina Jolie with an Asian person. Like we're just we're just
That's to
people.
say we are not 6 foot tall. I'm 5'8". I think the average height of us is 5'9" or something. So, oh, that's that. Yeah. Oh well.
Okay.
Tom Cruise is 5'7", so maybe it work if we replace one guy with an Asian.
I think
Yeah,
Tom
but he
Cruise
don't look
isn't
as
quite
good as
that
him.
tall either.
No, he's 5'7", but the thing is, he look good. And yeah, okay, never mind that. I don't want to touch on that. That's it. That's it. All right. Okay. So, can you describe for me a moment whereby you feel that nobody understands you and it is difficult for you to connect with everyone? So, if I can specify a bit on that, it's because your parents, while they speak English, they are Filipinos by birth, right? So, as a result, everyone before they move to the states, their mindsets, how they operate, their culture is Filipino. So I assume that they would implement this kind of lifestyle at home, and you being the daughter, you have to follow along. And along with that, maybe you can also elaborate on a relationship with your romantic partners, like because there has been a lot of cases whereby cultural differences in the end affect a union or even just a relationship.
um, my parents, they're actually a little different. I think the Philippines, because it used to be like an American colony type of thing.
Spanish. They were colonized by Spain.
Oh yes, that's right. They were Spanish colony for a long time, and then I think it was the Spanish American War where they were like given over to the Americans, and there was just a lot of American influence in the Philippines. So I think that in the Philippines, it seems to me when I visited as an adult, I got to see it again through a new lens, and it was very interesting because there was so much about that culture that was familiar from my upbringing, the food and certain traditions, but also there was so much American culture that I was able to really identify with. So my parents, they didn't really try to preserve. I think their mentality was, we want to integrate as much as we can into this like new land of opportunity back in like the 70s, right? Because they wanted to have that wealth and opportunity for themselves because of where they came from, this third world country. So they tried very hard to integrate, and at one point they stopped speaking to me in Tagalog, and only in English, so that I would have really good English and not be confused at all. Um, we still ate the foods at home, but we didn't really celebrate in the same way. So I feel like, yeah, it wasn't like I didn't really feel like too connected to my like
Your original
ethnicity.
roots. Yeah, your
Yeah,
original root.
there were some things, but I kind of, for me, I just always identified as American, and I still do. I notice when I travel, like that to me feels like home when it reminds me of where I grew up. Um, yeah, and with I think like the hardest one of the hardest things was like a literal not being understood. Like literally, when I was traveling in South America, I was there for a year and a half, and I thought, they don't speak any English there, and so I thought when I enough of the schooling that I had in the States, because a lot of us take Spanish in school, that I had
Hola.
enough information to be able to talk to people and get by. But I quickly realized that I had to learn Spanish. So I learned enough Spanish, and it was enough to start a conversation. And when the conversation starts to get deeper, people get really excited. They speak really quickly, and then I kind of understand them, but then I'm not really able to express ideas or opinions. And so I found myself getting quite frustrated, because I felt like I was being treated in a certain way because I couldn't speak the language. And because my English, or sorry, my Spanish was very limited, it kind of seemed like I didn't really have a lot of intelligence or a lot of interesting things to share. But it was really that I didn't know how to express it to them so that they understood. And that to me was so frustrating because I kind of understand what they're saying. I just didn't know how to reply back. And that reminds me a lot in the States when people just expect other people to learn English. And if somebody doesn't have great English, they think that they're dumb because they say things with broken English, when in actuality, that person might have a lot of really nice, beautiful, intelligent things to share. They just don't know how to,
Expressive.
and a lot of people kind of, they lose patience with that. And I noticed people losing their patience with me. And then I started losing patience with myself, like, no, I just don't know how to tell you these things. So yeah.
Okay, okay. So, okay. With regards to what you said regarding how your parents allowed, oh, sorry, gave you the liberty to embrace the culture in America, yeah? I know you don't have much exposure to your ancestral roots or your family, or I think you might have met your family member, but it's just like some special holiday kind of feelings with your family in Philippines. How do you feel that there can be a balance when you are trying to, sorry, if you have the chance though, how do you feel that you can maintain the balance of both maintaining a cultural root in Philippines but at the same time embracing the Western side?
Oh, I don't I don't know. I think just based on my experience, the food has such a huge part to do with it. Like I've been to, I think, 35 different countries in my life, and food is just such a huge part of culture, like, I mean, even in the States, there's like this whole veganism versus carnivorism, and people are just very passionate about what they're
Carnivorism
eating.
for the win. Okay, sorry about that.
I've been back and forth with my eating habits, but that's another topic. Yeah, and so I've noticed, there's certain countries where, like in Spain, where eating is just a huge part of their culture. It's how they come together. It's how they connect with each other. It's a social event, because everybody needs to eat, right? And yeah, and it's so interesting, like, because what for me, like, I'm not a culinary expert. I just like to eat food. But when I try a new culture's food or a new country's food, it's very interesting. Like, you can see how in Vietnam there's some French colonial like influence in their foods, right? The flavors. You can see, like in India, all the spices that they use are like local to that region, and shows the history of the spice trade, like
And you can actually
uh,
find some common dessert in Philippines and Indonesia. Yeah, they kind of share quite the same kind of ingredients.
yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of, even the language is quite similar based, the Malay type. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, so I think that to keep that alive within myself, like literally inside my body, is to connect back to eating these foods that come from like what my ancestors ate, right?
I think your favorite is a Sinigang. I know a lot of Filipino Americans tend to like it.
That's my favorite. When I'm sick, and I feel, you just want like comfort food, sinigang is definitely my comfort food. Every time I go home to visit my father, he knows to make me sinigang. So
Okay, okay. Yeah, one of my past guests, Miss Christine Chen, who is actually who actually spent her considerable childhood in Philippines. Actually, I was having a bit of a reverse cultural issue because she was away in Taiwan and Hong Kong for the New Year. She went back, then after that, she has a difficulty adjusting back to LA. So she does what you mentioned about food really does make sense because I actually sent her a video on YouTube where you can find the best Filipino eats in LA, and she was really happy about it. So yeah.
LA's a great spot for Filipino food. Yeah.
So okay, okay. Have you ever considered moving to LA, or right now you're just happy in Bali as it is?
Right now I am happy in Bali. I love living abroad. I've tried, it's been five years of travel, 1 year of living here. And I've traveled outside of Bali within the last year just to attend some trainings and to teach. But that's more like you travel anywhere from your home. Every time, in between continents in my travels, I've gone back to my parents and kind of, reset, reground, maybe go to the doctor and buy a few things that like you lost or missed or whatever, before I was off again traveling. And every time I came back, like at first it was pretty challenging. Really, and I grew up traveling. Like, I grew up with a family that valued travel, so I internationally traveled a lot, just small trips. But really living abroad, or nomadic lifestyle, traveling abroad and really connecting with different cultures for a long time, coming back was very difficult because I found that the people that I used to be able, like, were my best friends that I connected with, I could no longer connect with them. Um, their mindset was very different, and it felt to me very close-minded. Um, and when you travel, you have to be open-minded, you have to be flexible and adaptable. And there's this, American mindset, especially in the Northeast where I'm from. You just, everything is on time and efficient and right now and quick. And if it's not here, you get what you want and you demand for it. And it's just not, like, you can't have that expectation when you go somewhere else, especially a third world country. You just have to let go. And sometimes there isn't any more avocado, in the restaurant, or sometimes, like, they just don't have change for you and you have to make do with that. Like, you just have to be flexible. So yeah, and I also found the difficult thing about connecting with people back at home that was a culture shock was just how little gratitude people had for things, you know, like you see in third world countries especially how little people have but how happy they are and how much less stressed they are, you know. And I think that as a Singaporean you probably understand that too, like
I'm actually
where
an
everyone is
Indonesian.
like,
I'm actually an
oh,
Indonesian. I
oh,
grew
okay,
up in
cool.
Singapore for 15 years or so. So yeah, but yeah, I
Yeah.
can relate to all this issue is because even in a developed country, there are times that you might see people who are less privileged, and the thing is that I can relate to a certain extent on that. In fact, one of the motivation to start this channel was I was stressed on dealing with the reverse cultural shock because if you guys are Indonesian, I don't really mean to offend you guys since I'm an Indonesian myself. Or if you're a Singaporean, I really don't mean to offend you also. But the thing is this. So when you're living in Singapore, you feel like you are you are just a gear, but in the gigantic machine. Is because the thing is that Singapore being the considered the international hub of Asia is that you are able to have the opportunity to cross over to the different parts of the world if you succeed. In Singapore, sorry, in Indonesia, it's a reverse of that. You kind of feel like the big gear, but in a tiny space to actually move around. It's because here in Indonesia, the lifestyle is a lot more subjective as compared to objective. Like for example, I can tell you is that when I was using Gojek, the transport service here, there was one time that the driver was talking to me, and then he I think the by the first 5-10 minutes, the conversation I can clearly remember is, "Hi, how are you? Are you married?" So I'm like, "Excuse me, excuse me, I don't know you. Who are you to ask me this? Even my mother doesn't ask me this." So as a result of that, is the thing is that in Indonesia they develop a very close familiarity with people. I guess it's also because most Indonesian parts, the locals tend to stay in a kampung area. So as a result, they know each other. They build that kind of
Yeah, like a
relationship.
village.
But when it's transferred to an actual workplace, it's not something common when you grow up overseas. So when you see it, it's like, okay, why are you being so intrusive? I don't know who are you. So yeah, I get where you're coming from.
Calvin, hold on one moment. My phone's about to die.
Oh no.
Yeah, I've gotten that question too before. Are you
Yeah.
married? Why, and then why are you not married?
Yeah, I think you
Also,
will get that a lot in Philippines because I know in Philippines it's still within the custom to marry young, right? If I recall correctly.
mm,
Yeah.
hmm.
Okay, so let's let's continue on, shall we? All right. So earlier you mentioned as a second generation Americans, yeah, the your most notable incident, sorry, not most notable occurrence is that you noticed that there was like a segregated event whereby an African American is put on one side, those who are of Caucasian born is on another side, and Asian is on another side. Yeah. So this I feel is that something that is truly something like a nerve struck when you are at a young age, and two is that how do you think this can be remedied? Because cultural integration is really important, as especially with the globalization era and people wanting to be able to get out of their country or those who are typically traveling abroad.
um, I think that when it comes to like at least in the states, social justice issues, you know, I think I studied a bit of this in college. Like, I think that the majority, right, would in that case would be the white people, the Caucasian descent people. They don't realize that a lot of things that they might do or say could be quite innocent. You know, like it's not no type of like aggression or um, anything negative. They're just more like curious, or they don't know really how to say certain things. And so there's a lot of these like microaggressions that happen in a person of color's like life, right? And it's like these small microaggressions. They come from this like place of not trying to be harmful, but over time, I see it as like a mosquito bite. Like you get one bite, you get another one, it's another one. And as a person of color, like it tends to add up and it builds up. And then you get kind of tired of being constantly, like asked the same thing over and over again. So I think that to kind of bridge at least a small gap is really just holding space for someone else. Like, and I think, it can also translate if you're just traveling from one country to another. It's really just about being curious and wanting to know. If you ask someone who's different from you um, about their experience and hold that space for them and truly listen, then now you can empathize or try to empathize, right? And relate it to yourself, even though it's not relatable, and help. So there's a lot of like, advocate type things that you can do. Like, if you're in a classroom and or I don't know if you're in like a meeting, a business meeting, and there's a person of color that like is trying to say something but is kind of being overempowered, and you as a white person or person in majority is like being listened to, and there's a clear favor for you over the other person. You can help them by actually getting the
So,
attention and then
yeah,
passing it on to them, right? Like holding that space for other people,
right.
and just being okay with helping and knowing that it's okay if you don't know things. It's okay if you don't understand. It's more about, I think we appreciate when people try to understand, right? And ask.
No worries, no worries. Okay. Okay, this is actually my last question here. So, what's your advice would you give to a younger generation of second generation Americans or somebody who is adopting a nomadic lifestyle for the very first time? So, if you can recommend any books or any kind of videos, also that would be helpful. But from your personal perspective, would be the best, I think.
um, when I started traveling, I actually didn't know that it would become my lifestyle. It just happened. I bought a round trip ticket to India, thought I was going to do my yoga teacher training for a month, and then I was going to move um, back home, and uh, ended up staying. And 5 years later, moved to Bali. So
Wait,
I didn't.
5 years in India, right? 5 years
Sorry,
in
I didn't.
India.
No, I did a few months in India, and
Oh,
then I started traveling. Yeah,
okay.
5 years later, I moved to Bali. So
Oh, okay, okay.
um, so I didn't know it would become a lifestyle, and I didn't know it was a thing either. Like I didn't really look on the internet and see this whole, you know, travel influencer kind of thing. And at that time, there wasn't very many of us doing it. I thought it was
Yeah.
kind of weird. So if I had known, if I had planned on doing it, I think I would have it would have taken me forever to leave. I would have been like, okay, I need this much money. That means I need to work this much longer. So before I quit my job, that means I need to buy all of these things. I need to get these travel guidebooks. I have to watch all these YouTube, channels to prepare myself mentally. The best thing you can do, and this is the advice I give to a lot of friends or people that ask me about how do you travel by yourself as a woman? How do I, start teaching yoga abroad? How do I, like become a digital nomad? I tell people, it's you have to just go, have an idea of what it is that you want to do. Have an idea of, know how much money you have, and budget for sure, because it's going to get away from you. But
Yeah.
yeah, just go, you can't plan for everything, and if you wait too long, it's you're gonna miss the train, right? So
Yeah.
the hardest part is leaving, and people think it's scary. People think that that it's impossible, and it's really like you have everything that you need with you, and just staying open-minded, being really flexible, staying curious, and respecting other people's cultures, knowing that you are leaving your bubble to go to their bubble, and if somebody else doesn't understand you, it's because you're in their bubble, they're
Yeah.
inside their place, right? So it's important, I think, that we really respect where we go, and yeah, and everything will come to you as you need it, right? Like
Yep.
the lessons learned by traveling and working and living abroad, like you really understand who you truly are, not just what your country or your home life or your ethnicity or background or whatever, not what all of those things told you you needed to be, right? It's you realize, oh, this is who I am because of these things, but this is who I truly am.
All right. Okay. Okay. And with that, we are coming to the end of the show. So first off, I need to do a little shout out. So thanks to Ben Vogel. Ben is actually a past guest of mine. His older brother is actually in New York City. Is actually going to come as a future guest of mine. So there's also Mr. Melvin, who is a good buddy of mine. Thank you so much for leaving a comment. Okay, so this is actually my first attempt in a back-to-back show. I don't know why. I typically do not like doing a back-to-back show, but I just turned 27 yesterday, so maybe I try to bring something new. Since
Oh yeah, happy birthday.
thank you, thank you. I'm old. Yeah, I'm
Still
entering.
young.
Yeah, young at heart. It's always good to do it. Yeah, I think that's what you teach in acro yoga too, right? Yeah. Okay. So for okay the okay so that's actually everything I need. Michelle, do you have anything you want to mention? Maybe regarding your acro yoga practice or any kind of courses that you would be doing or anything?
Oh yeah, if anyone out there comes to Bali, reach out to me on Instagram. I can connect you to the community here. We can play together. If you
I'm
want to
going to
learn,
Bali actually next week.
oh, you are. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's. I'll bring you into one of my classes. It's for
Okay.
beginners. It'll be fun.
Oh God. Okay. I hope I don't break somebody's spine. Oh God. Okay. All right.
Also, be on the lookout if you want to learn. I have a course, a beginner's course that I'm launching on my website soon. So
All right.
that'll be up and running in a few weeks.
All right. Okay. Michelle's Instagram and also for her and also for her website is already in the description box. So if you guys are interested, just tune in to check it out. Okay, I actually wanted to do this before the beginning of the show, but I forgot. I apologize. I actually want to ask people to ask where is Michelle actually from, but but we kind of reveal it throughout the show. So oh well. Maybe I'll get the opportunity for that the next time. And lastly, for those of you who are celebrating it, Happy Chinese New Year, and yeah, I hope your 2020 will be better. And with that, that's the end of episode 26 of Global Citizens. Yeah, thanks so much, Michelle.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.